Welcome to Two Deep Hokies Under the Influence, a Sons of Saturday podcast. I'm your host, Pete B, and I've got my co-host, Sam Jesse, here tonight. Sam, how you feeling, buddy?
Feeling good. How are you doing this week, Pete? It feels like football is finally starting up with media days.
Yeah, we are recording just about every week now, so it certainly feels like it's starting. We've got ACC Kickoff, or Media Days. If you aren't familiar with what the kickoff is happening right now. Big Ten Media Days started today also, I believe. So busy stuff going on. Why don't you kick us off with a cheers?
Well, my cheers is to just that. I feel like if you were to split up the college football calendar, and college football has the longest off season of any major sport, you have magazine season, which is like spring practice to media days, and then media days to kickoff is like preseason mode. And so we have officially entered, in my head, preseason mode. So cheers. It is,
Cheers.
in my head, football season.
Yes, sir. Hold your beer up there real quick, because we both got some juicy boys there.
We are. It is. I'll tell you what it is. I told you guys I was going to do more summery beers. We'll get to this, but it has been rainy and stormy in the 757 for like almost 3 weeks now. So feel good with
a lot of
good
overcast going on up here as well the last few days. We had a bunch of hot, beautiful, sunny weather for a couple weeks, and now it's turning a little bit the other way.
This is one of the worst weather summers I think I've ever experienced.
It's
been
right?
pretty brutal. It's been pretty bad. Yeah.
So we are going to talk about media days, the ACC kickoff. We had our correspondent, Will Trent, down there sending out the tweets from the Suns account, from his own account. So we got a lot of coverage online. If you didn't see any of that, we're going to go over the Phil Steele magazine preview. Speaking of magazine season, Sam, this is our last one. The last preview we're going to talk about is the Phil Steele preview. And at the end of the show, stick around for Sam's mystery Hokie. He will provide some years and stats, and I will try to guess the player. For now, let's get to these news and notes. FSU and Clemson staying put in the ACC, at least until next year, according to Pete Thamel. This is that whole August 15th deadline thing. And due to the ongoing legal battles, multiple sources are saying that Florida State and Clemson are not expected to notify the ACC that they intend to leave by that August 15th deadline. And you had some kind of satirical tweet about that, I believe.
Yeah, I mean, I'll say this. I would say probably 90% of conference realignment news that you have heard since the beginning of 2024 is all just kind of like made up fan fiction and like people trying to fix college football in their own heads. Of the 10% that is legitimate news, most of it is put out there for negotiation purposes by one side or the other. And so it's been very difficult following this process, especially this summer when there's nothing else to talk about. And it was like all of a sudden this August 15th date came out of nowhere, and it never really had legs, but the college football media personalities catch on to it really easily, and they start talking about it. Fans start talking about it. Doesn't really seem like Florida State and Clemson have any intention on leaving in the next couple years. They haven't made those moves yet. They do want to leave, I would assume, or at least get a bigger slice of the pie. But I don't think that's going to happen in 24. It's not going to happen in 25. Like 26 is the earliest I could see legally Clemson and Florida State making those moves. I just don't see it before that.
Yeah, so basically we're talking about the season. So if they left tomorrow, that would be for the 2025 season. Mm-hmm. If they left next summer, which is what it seems like it could be, that would be for the 2026 season. And that would be the earliest that we're basically looking at now, and unless something changes.
And even if they outright win these court cases, they'll still have to find a few $100 million to pay that buyout. Like it's not, they're not going to do it for free. They might not do it for the full amount, but they're not going to do it for free.
And I also would imagine that doing it right now, say you needed that $100 million to buy out the conference, on a 7% interest rate or whatever it would be right now, like that's not ideal. Like this is not the time to be financing $100 million buyout potentially. That's why they're trying to get out of it. And I don't know if you heard a little bit about legal battle. We're not going to talk about it so much, but they got down to the definition of what is means in the contract, because if you're in the conference, then is means you're a current member, but if it turns to a was, does that mean that Clemson has to pay? So they were talking a little bit about this on the College Football Inquirer, and I was just cracking up because that is what I essentially do for a living, is just legal language when it comes to patentable inventions. And so it struck very close to home because we talk about meanings of words all the time.
I'm not going to pretend to know the legal system behind it. I just think it is very funny that we've spent probably 6 months just figuring out where to hold these court cases. Like,
Yeah.
we are between South Carolina, Florida, North Carolina, some third party state has been discussed. Like, it is absolutely ridiculous how slow these big corporate, I put corporate in quotes because they're not corporations, they're universities and a collection of universities, how long these legal processes take. And I think the Twitter world, especially the sports Twitter world, moves much, much quicker. So I think the takes have gotten out ahead of themselves.
Yeah, especially when so much of the grant of rights is redacted and they're still trying to uncover all of the details of it.
Man,
But
goodness.
let's
One,
go
one thing I
ahead.
did want to point out while we're talking about this, so I looked this up today because I think there's this idea, and especially within a lot of Virginia Tech fans, because I think a lot of Virginia Tech fans would be okay with a move to the Big 12. I think if that happened,
Yeah, we talked a lot about it just last
and
week with Clark, and that might all be null and void for another year now.
right. So last year, and what will happen this year, will happen this year in 2024 for ACC schools competing in football, and that does include Notre Dame. I'm so sorry to tell you all that, but they do get a cut of this. ACC schools will be making $44.8 million each, right? How much do you think the Big 12 schools are making?
31.
33.6.
I thought it was right around there. Yeah.
That is an $11.2 million difference. How are they going to make up $11.2 million per school while adding 2 more schools? That is a
because
crazy
of the
contract.
branding. I mean, the only reason we're at that number is because we have Florida State and Clemson. Like they
I
need those schools. If they don't
I
get those schools, then you can't make it up.
I
But
would
I
agree
see
with
what you're
that,
saying.
but
I see what
it's
you're
a
saying.
big jump. And also Big
We
12
are
schools,
ahead of them.
The Big 12 schools that were in there before the G5, they took a $10.4 million pay cut a year.
Yeah. It's not, I mean, I think this came out when the Pac-12 was looking for their deal and a couple other G5 conferences. Yes, live rights are still valuable, but where they were a couple years ago to what you can get now, it's a different world. And people, tech companies are pinching pennies, they're laying people off. Like this isn't the best time to be negotiating a big fat TV contract, but yeah, we'll move on to some other stuff. Recruiting, not so much there. Now, Hokie Fest is coming up on July 27th, and that's a big event down in Blacksburg. They usually have like a barbecue, and all these kids come out. I think Peyton Falzone's going to be on campus among a bunch of other prospects, and that would be kind of the soonest I would think we'd see any action. There are some announcements coming up for guys we're interested in, but nothing is imminent as far as I know. Does that sound right to you?
Yeah, and usually those big events are catalysts for commitments, right? A guy will commit, to the coaches there, then they'll do their own commitment on a birthday or a holiday or like whatever they choose to do.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you'll hear anything that weekend, but it could be the week after or 2 weeks after is maybe when we would expect a couple guys to jump in the boat.
I think, wasn't it last year when like Mensa jumped in right after that thing? He ended up decommitting, but like it was somebody that just like was blown away, and just
Yeah.
like those kids get real emotional after they're there and they're having fun. And sometimes you get it on the weekend. Usually you're right. It's a little bit afterwards.
Yeah, and that is one potential downside with these events is you get kids really excited and they love it, they commit. You think you have a commit, and you adjust your recruiting board based on that, and you're all ready to go, and then they take a visit to somewhere else, and then they go,
Yeah.
"Oh, I love this place too." And turns out 17-year-olds aren't great at commitment. Who knew?
All right. I want to talk about the Vandy game quickly. One, tailgate information. Someone had gotten into our YouTube comments asking like, hey, what's the deal with the tailgate? And on the Sons of Saturday account just the other day, the boys put out like, here's the information for the Nashville Hokies tailgate info. And if you go to their site, they ask you to just like send an RSVP. There's an email on there. I think it's just tnhokies@gmail.com. It's something like that. But if you go to the Nashville Hokies website, you can RSVP to their tailgate. I believe it starts at 8:30 in the morning, goes until game time. I sent a quick email over to them just saying like, hey, me and my wife are going to pop by because I think that's the move before the game. Not that it's anything I'm committed to. We could end up at a bar, at brunch, or something else, but
it's tough to tailgate at 11 o'clock.
Yeah.
That's a tough call, especially after we're promoting a tin roof event.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So it is going to be an interesting morning. I
Didn't
think
Pat say he's just going to like call a cab and go to the game?
I think it'll be a quick tailgate, no matter what you do. More interesting, I think they are also looking to do something post game, which might be a little more lively.
Yeah.
Hopefully everyone's in a great mood after that. So if you're looking, they have a Google form that they put out. You can fill that out really quickly and they'll add you to their email list, or it helps them plan.
Oh, the Suns have
like
that Gmail form, the Google form. Yeah.
Yeah. It was sent out by the Tech Alumni Association.
Oh, was it? Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. So it helps them plan out stuff and get that stuff ready. So if you're interested, do that.
Cool. And then I think there was a cool tweet that the guys put out the other day asking how many Tech fans will be down for the Vanderbilt game. And it was, 10 to 15, 15 to 20, 25 to 30, something like that. I think I put the second or third guess, which was around like 15 to 20K maybe. What are you thinking? Because I know their stadium's under construction. I don't know the capacity off the top of my head. How many Hokies do you think end up in that stadium?
See, it's tough because the stadium's not that big. Like I think at full capacity, it's like 42,000. Like it's about the size of Duke
I
Stadium.
don't even think I have my phone on me. I would look it up. But regardless,
Yeah,
I know some people will probably go and maybe not even go to the game, just be enjoying Nashville and doing other things, tailgating, whatever.
Yeah, I think you could see it half Hokies. I mean, if you look at what happens when Georgia plays there, when Florida plays there, when Tennessee plays there,
Almost
or a little more
anyone in
local,
the
but like
SEC.
anyone in the SEC pretty much, it goes about half full. I think you could expect that from Virginia Tech. I also know Sons of Saturday, like we got another ticket allotment from Vanderbilt.
Oh.
So it's not like Vanderbilt is selling these tickets really quickly. They're going somewhere though. So
And didn't we get more for the school anyway because it was supposed to be at the Titan Stadium? So we already had a big allotment?
Yes, I don't know the exact numbers of that, but we got more of an allotment than you usually would for an away game. So I think it's going to be a lot of Hokies in that stadium.
So let's say 20K. Like I think that's a good baseline. Like we could have 20. We should have 20,000 Hokies in Nashville, and then maybe 20 or more at the game.
I think it'll look like a couple of the Duke games have looked.
Oh yeah,
like the Dalton Keene touchdown picture, which is one of my favorite pictures of Tech football history. That's what I'm envisioning right now.
You know what's crazy about that Dalton Keene picture is the weekend it was after, right? Like hadn't we just lost to ODU the weekend before or something?
That was the game after ODU. Duke was ranked and Tech went in there
and we won. Still had tons of fans there and we won. Yeah. That's what Tech does. We will lose, a stupid game and then we'll go out and we'll beat a ranked opponent the next week.
I spent that entire game with a mug from Hokie House in my hand playing darts, watching that little teeny TV that's right above the dartboards. So
you were still a student at the time? Was that your last year?
I was a small child. Oh, no, that was my junior year, I believe. Maybe.
Okay.
One of those.
Well, you were old enough to be in Hokie House, so
I was in Hokie House legally, yes.
Yeah, so you were 21. All right, that's enough about the Vandy game. We're going to get to more of our Vandy stuff on our next episode because we're going to preview the first 6 games of the season, meaning the first 6 opponents of the season in our next episode, part of our 2-part opponent preview series that Sam and I are going to do. Hopefully we'll have a guest for one of those shows. Not quite sure at the moment, but those will be a lot of fun. I love doing those every year. I got a question from Basil. Basil Safi, guy I has emailed the show many times, friend of the show, met him at the Rutgers game last year. And we were talking about Micah Matthews in the last couple episodes, and he said, have you heard about Jimmy Mullen? He's another two-sport guy who was the number one heavyweight coming out of high school for the wrestling team, committed to Tech, but he was also on the football roster and was a pretty solid football recruit. I think he might have been a 3-star recruit. As far as I can tell, he is no longer on the football roster. His future in wrestling was much more bright, at least from a collegiate perspective. Maybe he'll come back to football at some point, but as far as I know, Basil, Jimmy Mullen is no longer on the roster. He was listed at O-line and then I think at D-line, but he's not there anymore. But I am excited about his wrestling future.
Mm-hmm. Yep, they just announced a match with Oklahoma State, which will be a really big one.
Oh yeah,
so looking forward to that.
Yeah, they're a powerhouse, so that'll be fun. Me and Sam are still working out the details for a preseason kickoff happy hour in Richmond in August. I've talked to a couple places, heard back from a couple places. Some seemingly are going to welcome us with open arms. So we're going to be down in Richmond, hopefully the weekend of 8/17 at a brewery or a bar, kind of just hanging out, doing a meet and greet with you guys, maybe doing a little recording. All the details haven't been worked out. As soon as they are worked out, you guys will know. And we'll have, a Facebook event and it'll all be on the up and up. It will be no charge. It'll just be come and hang out with me and Sam and whoever else can make it. But I'm looking forward to that. And finally, like the video and subscribe to the Sons of Saturday channel. We are in subscription season. This is the time of year where we can really build out some of our football follows. So if you've been watching the show, or you're just catching it for the first time, subscribe because there's going to be a lot of Virginia Tech content coming over the next month, 2 months, and all the way into the season. So is there anything else you had for news and notes, Sam?
Yeah, that was about it. I think we are a couple more weeks away from fall camp starting. This is when you just cross your fingers and hope everyone stays healthy and doesn't do anything stupid.
Yeah, I think it is. By the time we put out our second preview, we should be in fall camp at that point. So we'll chat a little bit about the opening camp stuff because there's always different things, whether it's height and weights or just some new announcements or position changes. There's always something. I love that part of the season too. Let's get to ACC kickoff. I'm in my blue ACC hat. Like I said, we had Will down there taking some pictures, putting out a bunch of tweets. He did a great job. Let's go back to Monday, though. Before we get to the Hokies, who were there today for Tuesday's slot, Jim Phillips had some strong words about the conference, about the disruption that two certain schools have been causing, and emphasized that those schools not only signed the grant of rights twice, but did so eagerly. He was really trying to stick it to FSU and Clemson.
I think it's kind of ironic that when you close your eyes and think ACC schools, I think for most people, the first two that pop up are kind of like Florida State and Clemson. Those are the two, at least football wise. I think.
Yeah, I was thinking
Duke Carolina
UNC,
for basketball, Wake Forest, the basketball world for football. It's been Florida State, Clemson. And so I think that was very targeted that he said, not only did these universities sign it twice, they did so eagerly. And you also have comments coming out of both from Clemson, a little more than Florida State, of we are still committed. And this is what they're saying, obviously, but we are still committed to the ACC. We love it here. We just want to make sure that when we want to get out, we know what we're getting into. And so it's, there's a lot of irony on both sides. I thought it was the strongest he has sounded. He isn't a very forceful speaker. And I think a lot of times he's one of the criticisms of him since he's taken over. He was previously the athletic director at Northwestern. Since he came over to the ACC, one of his criticisms has been he doesn't have that sales pitch, rah, type of attitude. And I think that might have hurt them potentially in some negotiations. I think it might have hurt them when it goes to what they did with the college football playoff, where he voted in favor of the current system. He sounded a little more forceful in that, and I think that's a good change of tone for him.
Yeah, he's not someone anyone is fearing. This is not a powerful individual, so to speak. He, of course, his words were strong the other day, but you said the Northwestern thing. It's like, yeah, he oversaw the regime that, had Pat Fitzgerald and that whole situation. Of course, he was
Didn't end
gone
well.
by the time that went down. But like Jim Phillips, I wish I could say better, but if you ask just about anybody who's neutral, him and some of Swafford who came before him, they failed the conference in a number of ways. Now, the teams also failed the conference, but a lot of things come from the top down. There are certain ways that commissioners can flex their muscles to help the conference along the way, and I'm not sure the ACC had that. But go ahead. Do you have something to say?
Yeah, no, I think when you saw with the current 12-team playoff system, which it seems like is going to be here to stay for a little bit. I know there was talk about 14 teams. It looks like that has taken a backseat for right now. When the ACC and Jim Phillips voted, yes, we want to do this, we're in favor of it. What it did was make sure that they were a little bit more towards the Big 12 and the G5 than they were to the Big 10 and the SEC. And I think right now the message is, oh, we're much closer to the Big 10 and the SEC than we are the Big 12. He says that, and then you vote a different way. I think that's causing a lot of the issues. And I think if the ACC is to continue to be a major football conference, number one, their teams need to win. And number two, he needs to win at the negotiation table with ESPN or Apple or Amazon and get creative and find a way to create some extra revenue for this conference. Yeah, because Brett Yormark at the Big 12 will bring up that $33.6 million number, and he'll bring it up quickly.
And we're also the conference that had an undefeated team left out of the playoff on his watch. And that is a criticism. I mean, there are some commissioners that might not have happened to. And I realize the Jordan Travis situation. I understand all that. It happened on his watch. And I don't recall there being a lot of strong language after that happened, not to mention the fact that our ACC guy, I think it was the NC State gentleman, had to go out and like talk about it and announce it that we were getting left out. Like our conference was getting left out. Like the ACC's leadership in so many ways is just, they don't have enough balls. Like that, I think Whit Babcock is a pretty good leader. I can't speak for all the other presidents and ADs. I can't do that.
Yeah.
So
caught a really weird spot.
Yeah.
For I think a lot of schools. I think Virginia Tech, NC State, UNC, a few others are caught in a weird spot because they love the ACC for everything except for the paycheck that comes along with football. And that's a really tough spot to be in because that's kind of the only thing that matters. Look at a program like UCLA, who is, I would argue, the most or one of the most successful athletic programs in college sports history. And they were bankrupt. Like if they didn't move conferences, they were going to have to cut sports. So winning doesn't cure everything. You need these big contracts. And right now the ACC is, they need to find something. They need to find something.
They need to find something. And I think these ACC commissioners, ADs, presidents, they do romanticize the other sports and will really, preach all the successes we've had in all these other sports. And it just doesn't matter. I love basketball. I love baseball. I enjoy track and field, but like that stuff doesn't matter when you're in the position these people are in. You need to make it financially viable, and that's through football. Phillips added a bunch of comments about the strength of the conference, that they're going to fight to protect its members, and it will remain a premier conference in college athletics. And like with a consolidation, yeah, you're third. Like third's not so bad, but like the distance is what's bad. Like there's only so many conferences.
Isn't that like a Meatloaf song? Third isn't bad. It's a little before time, but we're gonna sound real stupid right here. Someone's yelling at their radio or phone or whatever they're doing.
Oh yeah, I know exactly what you're
2 out of 3 ain't bad or something like that.
2 ain't bad, right?
Okay.
No, but we are 3, and that is bad.
Darn.
But our partnership with ESPN is not going away, quote unquote. That's fine. What matters is who's in that partnership with ESPN. No, it's not necessarily that it's not going away. And then the ACC, there were some other things like the posters that were up calling themselves the Conference of Quarterbacks. and the toughest non-conference schedule in the country. Congratulations. Win some games, though.
Cheers.
You can have a tough schedule, but if you lose all the games, why are you bragging about it? Like, some things
Pete,
that
didn't
we
we just talk
do.
about a Vanderbilt game? Like we played Vanderbilt,
They're on
Marshall,
our
Old
schedule. What can I
Dominion,
say?
and
But like,
Rutgers.
yeah, we got NC State playing Tennessee. We've got Miami and Florida. We've got all those Notre Dame matchups. So yeah, we challenge ourselves at a conference. The real challenge is winning. And this year, the ACC's got to go out and win for some respect purposes. And we've talked about that already this offseason. I hope I don't get a call from Jim Phillips' office. I don't think we're important enough for that, but
No, he's a huge listener of the pod, actually.
Listen, Jim, I appreciated the comments. I just feel like the ACC could be doing and should have done so much more over the years. We've had all these programs like UNC and Miami, which have potential in football and have been missing the mark over 20 years.
Potential bright side. We have not seen, and there's been a lot of rumors about this, we have not seen a major contract with either Apple or Amazon, and both of those companies obviously are massive and want to put out sports content. And they are putting out major sports content. Apple has, MLS games and a couple of baseball games. Amazon, obviously, Thursday Night Football, and did a really good job with that. There is a college football market for either Apple or Amazon. That could be really huge. And you know what? I will show up to Lane Stadium on a Wednesday night. I'll do it. So I think you would have to be selective on those matchups, but there is a market for it. No one has jumped on it yet. There's been some talk about it. The Pac-12, I think, was close with Apple, but then decided no. We saw how that turned out. So
isn't the MAC doing something this year with one of those streamers? I can't remember what it was.
They are, but I think you have to. I mean, it's the viewership numbers are not even close. Even from action games, they get a lot of publicity with core college football fans. The ACC would blow any of those out of the water.
True. But the other thing with like the reason people even watch Maction on a Wednesday night, one, it's college football, but two, the vast majority of viewers are coming because it's on ESPN. It's on in the bar when you walk in on a Wednesday night after trivia. Like that's where those viewers are coming from.
Yeah, and it's branded. It's a great brand.
It's a great brand. I love it.
Weeknights in November is Maction.
All right, before we get to Pry and the rest of the players' comments and some Phil Steele stuff, I just want to take a moment to talk about our sponsor, Rhoback. Rhoback is the only performance activewear designed for those who crave activity. You can go to rhoback.com and load up your cart with the Commonwealth, which is the Virginia Tech polo, the Berg, which is the quarter zip, or any of their other merchandise, all the polos, all the designs they have. They're great women's stuff, all that good stuff. 2Deep VT is the code. 2Deep VT, all one word, will get you 20% off your first order. If you've already done a first order, tell your wife to do a second order. Use your work email, do a third order, whatever it is, get that 20% off. Rhoback is great stuff. I own a ton of it. Sam owns a ton of it. And that's that. For right now, Sam, I need to know what you're drinking.
So I told the people I'd have some new beers, got some new beers. I'm really excited about this one because it's one I really like. It is the Free Verse Hazy Tropical Juicy from the Virginia Beer Company. Pretty local here, 757 Williamsburg, Virginia Beach areas. It's really good. As you can see here, it is super duper hazy. Like it is opaque, but it is a really light flavor. It's not as heavy or hoppy as you would expect it with this much. It tastes kind of like the Orange Crush IPA. That's from Back Bay Brewing, I believe. It's that level of tropical orange flavor. But it has a little more haziness than that does. That's not a hazy IPA. This one is. So if you're looking for a summery beer, but you're into IPAs, this is a really good middleman one for it. I give it a 4. I think it's a really well executed hazy IPA.
Nice.
It is exactly what it looks like on the can and what it says it is. And I think that's actually harder to do in modern brewing than what you would expect.
I have yet to have that company. Like I've never had one of their beers, and I see their stuff, I see their cans, and I've always wanted to try it. Seems like they have pretty good branding.
This is one of the more popular. This is their more popular one They have a couple others, but this one is the one that you would find on tap most, especially down here.
I gotcha. I am drinking the Veil Sure, Sure, with a period after each one. I was so pumped. I was in my normal beer store. I see a Veil 4-pack, and it's a single IPA, a hazy IPA, but it's not a double, 6% alcohol. And I love Veil. Been to their old tap room. They actually just built kind of a new tap room down the street, as far as I know. My buddy was telling me. Very similar location, but I think it's around the corner. And this beer is awesome. You can see in the glass, it's similar to Sam's beer. I think I got a little bit more of like almost like an orange color than Sam had. His was a little bit more pale. This thing it's tasty, man. The Shore Hazy IPA, you definitely get those citrusy notes and whatnot, but it's just a pure hazy IPA. And with 6%, you can afford to have a couple of them and not feel too
Yeah. Yeah, I did
too
mention
bad.
this one's 6.8, so it is, I think, at a really good level for
Yeah.
a more warm weather IPA. This is, to me, this is like sitting on a slightly damp picnic table in the summer in an evening
I
vibe, and
like
you know
no, that's
exactly what I'm talking about.
that 6.8
Yep.
that's also right in that sweet spot. I like that. All right, let's get to Pry's comments. He was up first on the podium, and I guess let me ask you: were you like looking at the quotes, taking notes, and that kind of thing?
I
What did you notice?
I was watching it on YouTube
Okay,
TV on my phone. I put a text in one of our Sons of Saturday chats, and this is a just ridiculous thing to say in 2024 in America right now, but he sounds like he's running for governor in his responses.
a
Like
little bit.
he he has this he's a phenomenal public speaker. Like the way he answers questions and the way it's so rhythmic and so forceful, like he he could teach public speaking classes. It's really impressive. I thought the content of what he said was what he has been about since he got to campus. It's about building Virginia Tech's brand in the state. You can tell he's really thought about these things, right? Like, why did they retain players so well? You know, he's thought about what it really means to get recruits from the state of Virginia. He's thought about what it means to bring this program back to national relevance. And that comes through in his answers. So I think he is just the perfect guy for that environment. Like, he's going to knock it out of the park every single time.
Yeah, it was pretty coach speaky for the most part.
Oh, yeah.
He was like every answer. If you're plugged into this team, you've heard some version of it over the last 6 to 8 months. He did talk about the wide receiver room and how he's proud of them, and they were concerned last year, and now they may be a strength, and they really should be a strength. One of our greatest strengths is actually how he put it going into this year. He spoke about Kyron's relationship with that room and how that's really good. Someone asked him about returning production, and that was one of the better responses because he just talked about continuity and the fact that if you bring in the right people in the program, get the team captains, and you have a brotherhood. And he didn't say the word culture, but that's what he's talking about. Team first, love the school. That makes a huge difference. And we saw that last year. Even the year before that, we saw a little bit, but like the fact that all these guys wanted to come back, it's not just about NIL. Robbie had a great, we put it on our YouTube shorts. Robbie had a great short about this, but it's not just NIL. It's not just the buy-in. It's all of it. It's the coaching. It's the fact that you think you might be able to win and compete for a title. And it's being competitive in the NIL space. It's all of that. And so it's exciting to get all that returning production back due to basically, having a Clemson type culture, a culture that guys want to stick around and that kind of thing, having OKGs, so to speak. He also thanked Hokie Way and Triumph as part of that answer as well. He mentioned, as far as his influence, he's talked about his father, James Franklin, Jeff Munkin, Ricky Bustle, Foster, and Beamer. Like that's a really nice list of coaching influences.
Yeah, for sure. You know, he has been somebody who has been with really good staffs and been on very good teams. And I think he talked about I think someone asked him a question about the game against Miami. And of course, he gave the coach speak. We're not worried about that right now. We're worried about fall camp, and then we're worried about a game against Vanderbilt, um, which is pretty basic coach speak. But he did talk about how he thinks that is so important for Virginia Tech, for Miami, for the ACC, and for college football in general. And I think I'm not going to say it. I'm not going to say the phrase, but he understands a lot of what made Virginia Tech really good. And
Yeah.
like the recipe for success, I do not think has changed that much from when he was here, from the Beamer years, and honestly also from the beginning of the Fuente years, what it was like veteran team, deep wide receiver, mobile quarterback, strong defense. Like those are the recipes for success here.
The
And
two
I'm not going to
best
say it,
things.
but
I know exactly what you're thinking. I think I tweeted it out about an hour ago in a meme. Two best things I thought he said: the hunger to bring back the VT standard is something that he's very focused on, and that's why he wanted to be here. He wanted to bring us back, and he does believe that it is a place that you should be competing for championships and competing for the playoff. And anyone who went to school in my era, all the way up to the beginning of your era, like that is what we expect. We expect us to be in the title hunt. We not in the championship game every year, but at least like in the conversation, in the hunt, year in and year out for the most part. And I think Pry understands that, and he wants to bring us a championship. And maybe as soon as this season, he sees it as a possibility. He also said that there has been no sign of complacency this offseason. Complacency. Despite all the talk, despite all the hype, because there's been a lot of questions about hype. Josh Pate isn't helping our cause because he talks about us every freaking day, it seems like, on his show. But the fact that the team, at least in Pry's eyes, isn't showing complacency, I really liked to hear that.
Yeah, I mean, that's great. I think that hype can do one or two things. It can either motivate you or it can make you complacent. It seems like it's motivated them.
Yeah.
We'll get to the comments from the players, but they seem to be the goal now is to prove that hype correct. And that's a really good spot to be in. I think mindset wise, I am not worried about this team heading into that game against Vanderbilt.
No, it doesn't seem like it. And that's Drones. Let's go to him because he talked about expectations and the phrase like last year was last year. And he said that a couple times throughout the day. And that's what you want to hear as a fan, is that there's lots of press clippings you can read. Dark horse Heisman candidate, all ACC. Even Kyron is saying, like, I want to have one of the best offenses in the country. He said that on a couple different occasions. But I think they have a clear mind as to what. Don't get in front of yourself. You haven't done anything yet. We won 7 games.
No.
We didn't do anything. We beat a depleted Tulane team in a pouring rainstorm. All right. We got a lot of work to do. And so what else from Drones did you like that he had to say?
I think just his confidence, how he has grown as a vocal leader has been impressive. He's a relatively quiet guy in general, but he has come out of his shell a bit and liked that. I loved his suit. Looked great. Had a great suit on, Louis Vuitton shoes on. Like he rocked that suit. I think also he made a cool comment about talking with Michael Vick and advice he's gotten from him. And that advice was, don't try to be me. Don't try to be Michael Vick. Be yourself. And that's important because
no one can be Michael Vick.
No one. First off, you can't be Michael Vick, but also like he can't be what Tyrod Taylor was to this program. He can't be like he's not going to break Logan Thomas's records. He's not going to be Michael Vick. Like he can only be Kyron Drones right now. And I think being in that mindset is really important. I think it was Antwaun Powell-Ryland made the comment that they were in the Drones era. And Drones commented, "Oh, I like the sound of that."
Yeah, it might have been Strong. Like it might have been Dorian Strong, but either way.
But that is it. Like this is the Kyron Drones era. It is not a return to the Tyrod Taylor era. It is not the Logan Thomas era. Like this is his team, and this is de facto his program right now.
So now we need to make T-shirts with like a Taylor Swift style Drones era.
Drones era tour.
We need to do that. The Drones era tour. All right, he had some other things I wanted to point out, particularly when he was talking to Eddie, because Eddie Royal had him after he was on the podium, like on a side studio or maybe before, it doesn't matter. Eddie asked him how much say he has in the offense. And Kyron said he had a lot of say, like in terms of maybe a play-to-play basis or whatever. I thought that was really cool. And his confidence in Bowen and the way they seem to trust each other, it goes back to the way he was recruited, right? Because Bowen got right on a plane, went down to Waco, got him. He talked about that a little bit today. And those guys just trust each other. And that's huge if Kyron feels like he has the ability to make a call in a tight spot, or like, I'm seeing something from the defense coach, I think we should do this or whatever. One, it shows maturity that he's even willing to do that. A lot of guys don't want to do that kind of stuff. They just want to stick to the plays. They don't want to screw it up, whatever. I love that kind of back and forth idea that he put there. And then
remember,
go ahead.
Well, before you go, remember when our quarterbacks couldn't decide what to do on an RPO?
Yeah. Or the coaches were telling them not to do certain things, right?
Or giving them hot routes for every play. Yeah. A very different coaching style, a very different quarterback leadership style.
Yep.
I think it has taken time for Tyler Bowen to grow into a offensive coordinator at this level, but I think he's done so very, very well. I don't think we should be surprised looking back that it took him, 14 games to figure it out, but credit to them because they have figured it out and they seem like they have a really good relationship. And that's a good sign for not only Kyron this year, but whoever's the next quarterback after Kyron.
Yeah. I going back to that thing about the communication with him and Bowen, they have the in-helmet communication this year.
Absolutely.
And he said they would working on that in the spring and whatnot. That's going to be interesting to see how that plays out this season also. That's just a side note. But Eddie asked him the moment he knew that he might be able to play at this level and he feels comfortable as a starter, and he referred to the Pitt game. And then one of the cooler things was he asked him, give us some guys to watch for. First name out of his mouth, Jennings, and that's his dude, and that he didn't get a chance to play with him last year. And I cannot wait to see what those guys do together. Yep. Like that is going to be so much fun.
I think even a lot of Hokie fans are sleeping on Ollie Jennings.
Well, who's sleeping on a big time is Phil Steele, and we're going to get to that as we get to his preview. But he also mentioned Bayshaw and how Bayshaw wants to go over 1,000 this year from the running back, from the rush yard perspective. Daquan Felton, who he called Quan affectionately, Jalen Lane, Dorian, Mansour, and he called out the entire D-line. So he had a lot of guys that he wanted to talk about, and that's something me and you and Clark said. Choosing these guys to even go to ACC Media Days, it was hard because we do have so many high quality players. Some years you're not sure you could get to 3, all ACC caliber guys to go down there.
Yeah. And I think they made 3 really solid calls. Obviously the starting quarterback face of the program, your star pass rusher, who I think is in some ways kind of exemplifies the new Pry era. You get a guy from Virginia to come back and he's immediately successful in that defensive front 7. And then you have your star cornerback who is probably going to be, we talked about top 3 round draft pick next year. So a good trio to have there in Charlotte for sure.
Finishing out with Kyron's comments, and because APR and Dorian had far fewer quotable things. So Kyron also mentioned the brotherhood, the continuity, the culture, guys that want to be there and come back to the program and all that good stuff. His biggest improvement, he said, being a vocal leader, getting everyone prepared for the situations and the games this year. And you had already talked about Vic, Tyrod. The Cam Ward thing came up again, which I do find extremely fascinating because Cam Ward, they're loving him down in Miami right now. And he's a high-profile quarterback, higher profile than Kyron Drones for sure, just in the length of time that he's been a known name and transferring around. And the fact that both of those guys are cousins and are going to play against each other, that's what Kyron said. He's like, I'm glad he chose Miami and not Florida State because that means we get to play this year.
Yeah, that is awesome. Like, what are the odds of that too? Like 2 cousins playing at a high level of quarterback in the same conference. It's pretty cool.
It's very cool.
I think it's also I think some Hokie fans were a little bit like, "Oh, we don't. He's a Miami guy. We don't run up around him." And like Shador, I think gets a lot of takes around him. I think it's awesome that they're able to hang out, and obviously they're getting good training, and learning from each other and working out. I think that is awesome brand exposure, and I I wouldn't mind hanging out on the beach throwing a football in Miami.
And
That
I don't
sounds
think
pretty cool.
anyone listening, well, that's true too. I don't think anyone listening would argue that those two quarterbacks, Shador and Cam Ward, are more polished quarterbacks. They're
Oh
farther
yeah.
along in their development as true quarterbacks than Kyron. He just got to start for the first time last year for a few games. Like
Mhm.
Shador had already been starting prior to getting Colorado. Then he gets to Colorado and blows up from game one. And so you can learn from those guys. There's a lot to learn from those guys. So I love the fact that he was working out with them.
Mhm.
And one last quote from him was that talking about guys in the offense, talking about players on defense, whatever, he's like, we're all trying to get to the NFL. And I think that is an interesting thing. I know that every college football player that plays at a high level is probably thinking about the NFL. But that idea of like we're trying to get to the NFL, that's how good we think we are. That is not a concept that I think was a focus,
Mhm.
and making it a focus speaks much more to us being a big time program.
Yeah, and I think it's such a positive thing, right? Like, why did I go to Virginia Tech and then go to Virginia Tech again? It was so I could do what I wanted to do at Virginia Tech
Mhm.
professionally. And that's why you went to Virginia Tech, and that's why the football player should go to Virginia Tech. And whether, you know, I think we get caught up in it so binary. Guys only want to go and get to the league, or guys only want to go and get a paycheck, or the guy wants to go because he's so rah school spirit guy. It can be both. And I think it's really positive that it is both. And I think you need a staff and a culture that promotes both.
Yeah.
And when you have a guy who's, hey, I'm a junior, I can be a top 2, 3 round draft pick, or maybe even a 4th round draft pick, I'm going to go. Seeing that as a positive of, oh, look, we get to put another guy in the league. It's another success story out of Virginia Tech. Seeing that as a positive instead of seeing that as, oh man, we lost a guy. We weren't able to hang on to a guy, and seeing that as a negative. It's kind of a mindset shift that, Virginia Tech as a program needs to get back to being positive about those situations. So
Yeah, we
I,
should be
I think it's
putting
awesome.
3, 4, 6 guys in the draft every year. That's what we
Yes.
used to do, and that's
Yes.
what we should start doing again. And speaking of guys in the NFL, Darrisaw got
Yep.
paid today.
Woo doggy. I don't know what you're gonna do with all that money in Minnesota. I mean, maybe a nice lake house, a fishing boat,
Yeah,
but
over
good for
100
him.
million if the contract, goes to I think he had like 70 million guaranteed, 77, something like that.
He's so good. He's
So
he's so, so good.
that was awesome. Hey, send him every NIL email you can. We need to get some of that money in the door over here.
Inundate his mailbox with nothing but orange and maroon Nike gear.
That's right. So APR, him and Dorian kind of had funny commentary because they both kind of said the same thing. They both want to get in the end zone this year.
Yeah.
And APR's exchange was particularly funny because he was like, yeah, I got to get a TD this year. I don't know how it's going to happen. And Pry like shot in there with a sack fumble. That's how it's going to happen.
He was close a couple times last year, and I think did Tech have a defensive touchdown at home last year? I don't recall one.
They had to have like a pick six at some point, right? Or like a
I don't at home. I don't think they
Oh,
did.
at home? I don't know, because like, I know 2 years ago, we had the Kelly Lawson, pick six.
Georgia Tech.
Yes, against Georgia Tech, and then last year, the Syracuse game was such a blowout. Did we have one in that game?
I
I
don't think so. Not
Yeah.
a defensive touchdown. So I think it would be we're due. Um, I think it would be awesome. They're gonna
Yeah.
get it now. They're
One
both
of
gonna get
one
it.
of the 2 of them, the odds are, especially if they didn't do it last year, is they're gonna get it this year. They're both too good and play positions that wreak havoc. That's part of, they create the havoc rates, the deflected passes and the sack fumbles and all that kind of good stuff. And then Dorian had a comment that over the years, because he's been at Tech a while now, that
Mhm.
he has learned how competitive he is and has been able to kind of like channel that into being the all ACC caliber player that he is now. And it's kind of been fostered throughout the years, including during COVID, where he actually said he liked playing in front of the empty stadiums. It was just like allowed him to focus and get better or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, he is such a success story and just sticking with it and developing in college. This is a guy who was not highly recruited out of high school, physically was pretty slender even for a cornerback. And so for him to go from that to NFL prospect, all ACC hype guy, and one of the best secondaries in the country is just so awesome. And I think he's going to have a phenomenal year because if you can't throw at Mansour all the time, can't throw at him all the time. And
Certainly cannot.
If Jalen Stroman is healthy and Dante Lovett keeps progressing, like that defensive secondary, they're going to have to throw at Dorian more than they did last year. So it's going to be really cool to see.
All right, let's move to Phil Steele. And we're not going to spend so much time on this, but we did Lindy's, we did Athlon. And one of the fun reasons that we get to look at Phil, or the result of looking at Phil, is that he has the Hokies ranked very favorably, whether it's in his power poll or just his top 40. And so the power poll I'll go to first, which basically just means the quality of the teams. This doesn't factor in schedule or anything else. And he has Virginia Tech at number 16 in the country. That's fourth in the ACC. So he's got Miami at 10. Number one in the ACC, he has is Miami. Clemson, number 2 in the ACC at number 13. Florida State at number 14, just one spot behind Clemson. And then us at 16. Higher than Athlon by a significant margin. I think both Athlon and Lindy's were both late 20s. So this is more in line with where you have the Hokies in your power ratings, right, Sam?
Yes, it is. Actually, it's exactly where I have him at number 16. Ironically, too, I also have Miami at number 10. So we're right on the money with that.
And they are your number 1 ACC school or no?
They are my number 1. So for ACC, it goes Miami's at number 10, SMU is at number 15, Virginia Tech at number 16, Florida State 19, Clemson 21. So all kind of bunched right there. I'm coming out with my article explaining everything and going over that. That'll be out on Friday. Fun stuff. I'm working on the data visualization now. It's going to be awesome. Please check out sonsofsaturday.com for that. And we'll talk about it a little bit more on the pod and as we get more towards the season. But yeah, I think he's a little bit higher on the Hokies than most. I think he is someone who values the returning production and continuity a little bit more than I think Athlon Lindy's do. I don't know where Pick 6 Previews has Virginia Tech. That's a newer magazine that's been put out. But I think those Lindy's and Athlon I know are pretty big onto the recruiting boost and what that does for your program. Phil's still a little bit more old school with the development, so I think that's why his Hokies a little bit higher.
Yeah, that's a good point. And some of the stuff that Phil does with his analysis is much different than those other magazines. For instance, the offensive line analysis and how he counts up all the starts for every school, which I've always loved. I always think that's like a very cool insight that you don't really get anywhere else. Just to finish out his power poll rankings, we were at 16, as I said, and then SMU was 21. I think that's where you said you had Clemson. So SMU at 21, Louisville at 23, and NC State, a big kind of fallback to 34, where in all the other rankings we've been seeing this year, it's been, Louisville, NC State, or NC State, Louisville, then Tech. Well, this has NC State last of that group and SMU a little higher in that group and Tech a little higher in that group. In his top 40 poll, which this is how he views it with the schedule factored in and basically how he thinks all the teams will finish. He has us at 17, so not much different at all, just one spot lower. And then he actually has NC State ahead of Louisville in his poll because NC State's ACC schedule is very favorable. I think they miss every good team.
Yep. And I'll be honest, I have NC State a lot lower than I thought they were going to be in my write-up. They are in my surprise they were this low section. Dude, they lose a lot.
They do.
Like they lost almost 200, like 215 to 220, something like that, tackles from last year.
That's a lot. That is a
lot. And they show a lot of warning signs of a team that should have regression, right? They won a lot of turnover battles. They won a lot of close games. They lose a lot of senior leadership. They show a lot of those signs. However, I think they crushed the transfer portal, and
They hammered the portal.
we still aren't sure how that impacts year one. Like, we don't have enough data to really say that. So there is that, and they have the easy schedule.
And I was listening to something today. It might have been the Split Zone Duo ACC preview. And they brought up Grayson McCall, who we know is a solid quarterback, but he hasn't been as good as that year with Jamie Chadwell in a couple seasons, like that really magical season that Coastal had. McCall's just been around for so long, but that was a while ago. And if we look at what NC State did in the portal with quarterbacks last year and their whole quarterback situation last year, they ended up having a decent season. But the quarterback room and situation and what they thought they might get out of Brennan Armstrong, it wasn't what they thought. It didn't go the way they thought it was going to go.
No, it didn't. I mean, that team was carried by that defense for a few games. I think the Louisville game and the Clemson game, the defense won those games, themselves.
They don't have that luxury.
Those are their two biggest wins last year. Yep, they don't have that luxury this year. So I think it'll be an interesting season for NC State. They could start 2-2. I think they have Clemson as their fourth game on the road, and then they have the neutral side against Tennessee. So it's going to be an interesting season for NC State.
Yeah, they could rip off a bunch of wins after that, but it's not the easiest start to the year for them.
They could go 11-1. I don't know.
I mean, I want them to beat Tennessee for ACC sake.
That'd be great.
Like that's a tough game, really tough game.
Mm-hmm.
Some of the other rankings from Phil, he has us at second nationally in returning experience. We are fourth in Bill Connolly's returning production, second, according to Phil, in experience returning. We had 122 total O-line starts, cumulative, going into this year. That puts us at 19th in the country. That's a very good number of experience. It's crazy because if you look at number one, Ole Miss has like over 200 returning starts on the offensive line. Yeah. Their offensive line is like nasty this year. But that was something I noticed across the ACC is that going to last year, I thought we had a bunch of good quarterbacks in the conference. That proved to not be so true. We had terrible offensive line play, almost up and down the conference. It like for the most part, like Louisville's was okay. Florida State's was okay. Pretty good, actually. Those two teams were in the championship. A lot of the other teams struggled on offensive line. This year, I think it's different. I think we bring back a lot across the conference on offensive line.
Clemson, UNC, NC State, Virginia Tech for half the season. All of those teams really struggled on the offensive line.
UVA was awful. They're going to probably be bad again.
Awful.
Pitt was bad. Yeah.
Pitt. Yeah, they're terrible.
We don't. I guess we. That's a foregone.
Terrible.
We knew that.
Terrible.
But yeah. So in terms of the offensive line thing, I said we were 19th. Well, the last two were Duke and Pitt, and Duke is 108th. And Pitt is 109th in terms of total starts returning. So could be a rough year for Manny Diaz and Narduzzi on the O-line front. In the QB category, Phil has our QB room, which included Colin Schlee. Colin Schlee made the blurb. He had us as the 12th QB room in the country. That is awesome.
I think that makes sense too, because Colin Schlee, people forget he tore it up at Kent State.
Mm-hmm.
And then he went to UCLA and tried his best. No one was really good at UCLA last year. They had a lot of injuries. They were really messy. They didn't like Chip Kelly. They played a really tough schedule. It was just gross. So you have a guy who has won a lot of games at a very difficult place to win and has played well. And you have a Kyron Drones who played very well the second half last year. So yeah, makes sense to me.
Yeah, it does, because Schlee is a very good backup. Like he could be a G5 starter, and he's our backup.
And Schlee is he's a big physical quarterback. Like if he gets in the game, expect a lot of read option.
Quincy Patterson.
He can throw a lot better than Quincy Patterson.
Okay, good. Yeah. That's a good thing.
He's a little more like, do you know the quarterback? Oh my gosh, what is his name? I'm going to Google it right now. Talk about
Wasn't Quincy playing some UFL recently or something? Or like, I felt like he was just playing some pro. Oh, was it Arena League maybe the other day? Go ahead.
Here's a blast from the past name. It's going all the way back to Maction at the beginning of the pod. Jordan Lynch.
NIU.
NIU. He at Kent State, he played a lot like Jordan Lynch.
Okay. I could see that. Yeah. Jordan, well, didn't he play in an Orange Bowl, Jordan Lynch?
Yes.
All right. So the other 3 QB rooms that were ahead of us in the rankings, because we were 12th, which is pretty high, but there were 3 ACC schools ahead of us: SMU, Miami, and GT. And so people are very high on Haynes King. You talked about his propensity to throw interceptions. We'll see if he's improved upon that. But people loving Cam Ward, people loving, was it Preston Stone and SMU? So
Yep.
it's, I think the whole SMU thing, and you have them pretty high. Some people think they're going to potentially compete for a spot in the ACC title. I think they're going to have a hard time as the year progresses keeping up with the physicality, because they just haven't been at this level. I know it's ACC football. You can call it what it is, but did you see what the American was last year? It was a joke. Like, those teams were not good. And
No.
This is a much higher level that they have to adjust to. I know their defense is solid. I know they've got some really good players on offense, including the quarterback, but this whole idea on being high on SMU, someone in the ACC has to be that 7th, 8th, 9th team. SMU, I think, is the team that's going to catch some of those losses.
They are very talented, and they're a little bit better on defense than a lot of people think. They lost their 2 best offensive linemen in the transfer portal. They played a very easy schedule last year. Credit to them, they won, but they played a very easy schedule last year.
And then they lost to BC.
I have them having the easiest schedule in Power 4 football this year.
Really?
Yes.
Wow.
They have a very easy schedule. However, they have a stretch where they play TCU, and then they travel and they host TCU. Next week, they host Florida State, and then they go at Louisville, bye week, at Stanford, at Duke.
Yeah, that's rough. Plus, don't they have BYU on the schedule too?
They have BYU. BYU's kind of trash, but then
but it's still BYU. I mean, it's still a power conference quality team, in my opinion.
But that's a really brutal stretch where I think those are, like, Stanford and Duke, easier games. TCU went 6-6 last year, 5-7
they didn't have
maybe.
A good season, no.
Yeah, but they're going to be better this year.
They will.
Like, they could go 2-3 in that stretch. Very easily.
Yeah, I just think that this is what we saw in the Big 12 last year, right? Those new schools that had to adjust. Call the Big 12 whatever you want to call it, but they had Texas and Oklahoma last year. The new schools struggled. The 4 new schools that joined all struggled last year for the most part. And so I predict some of that for SMU. And I just don't think Stanford's going to be very good. Where, as a counterpoint to that, the Pac-12 is very good. I think Cal actually proved to be pretty solid and might even finish ahead of SMU in the final standings this year.
We will see.
The rest of the position rankings for the ACC, I had a couple gripes here. One was the running back room. He had Virginia Tech as the 8th best running back room in the ACC, which I think is preposterous with Bashal Tuten. But there are a lot of good running backs in the ACC. There really are. But I think just Tuten didn't put up the numbers, I think, for Phil's system to rate higher. I think.
Yeah, and it's whenever you have such a running quarterback, I think Virginia Tech had a lot of games where they dominated on the ground, and it was by committee. It was Drones, Tuten, and Thomas. Yeah. And whereas a Cal had Jay Knott just running for hundreds of yards.
I just find it hard to believe that when Thomas is healthy and Tuten is fully healthy, that there are 7 better running back rooms. Like, I don't. 2 years ago, Malachi was our starter. He's a very good running back when healthy and given opportunities. The wide receiver thing was the biggest thing, and Phil calls it receiver, so it includes tight end. And I know we lost Wright to Ole Miss, so I guess you're factoring in Gallo or Harrison St. Germain or Gus Nell, but we are 36th in the country in the wide receiver room, and tied for 8th in the ACC in wide receiver room with 5 other teams. He kind of does this thing where he'll have like ties, and it's just like, we're really 8th and you tied us with that many other teams.
Yeah, I don't get that at all. I don't.
Well, he doesn't list Allie Jennings as a starter on his depth chart.
I think that is That was a miss. I
Yeah,
think you
that's a
have a
miss.
few national pundits who have forgotten that a year ago what they wrote about Ollie Jennings, and he played one game and he scored 2 touchdowns in those games, and then he broke his leg.
Yeah.
I I see how if you were going to just go off of last year's numbers, you might do that. But you look at this wide receiver room and I'm telling you, no defensive coordinator in the ACC is thinking Virginia Tech has the 8th best
No,
receiving core.
no.
So that's
And for my money, like I know Miami is extremely talented. Restrepo is really good.
yeah.
I some of these I know Stanford has that one stud. There, there's schools that have good cores, but like we should be 1 to 3, like somewhere in
Mhm.
there. This is ridiculous to me. And I think when everything's said and done, people will be like, oh my God, the receivers on Virginia Tech were ridiculous. Because we literally have 3 guys, I think, who play in the NFL and maybe a fourth in Aiden Green. I've talked about that before. So he did list Aiden Green as a starter instead of Ollie
Which is
Jennings, just
weird
so
because
you
I
know.
think Aiden Green, like, had less catches than Ollie Jennings still.
Yeah. I think
So, we'll
and
see.
he had him on the
I
roster. It's not like he forgot about him all the way. He just like put him down.
It's about
Whatever.
time somebody wasn't high on Tech,
Yeah,
for
let's
something,
just
you
take
know?
take the chip on our shoulder and move forward. I did like he had us as the 6th O line, number 5 DL, number 4 linebacker. This is all in ACC rankings. Which the 4 linebacker one, that's a little
Mhm.
bit. I don't know
I
about
don't
that
get
one.
that one. I don't get that one.
And then DB. Where do you think he had us in the DB room? Do you know?
I'm gonna guess 4.
6, which
Oh,
is an
I don't
absolute joke. It's a
wait, we're
joke.
5th in the nation in Athlon.
I know. That's what's so funny about it. And so, like to me, what's really crazy. So you take all the analysis I just gave you. I think we got screwed. Like my gripe is on wide receiver and receiver room in general. DB, a little bit of running back. He was very positive on quarterback. He still had us at 16th in the power poll. So despite the fact that he thinks that those positions aren't as good as we think they are, he still has us higher because he's higher in the linebackers. He's higher on the DL. Like it's kind of funny. Like even though he doesn't think we have a top wide receiver room in the ACC, he still has us as a top 20 team. And so I'll take it.
Yeah, I think part of it too is when you do these position rankings and the Athlon guys on the Cover 2 podcast, not to be confused with the Cover 3 podcast, they when they talk about their unit rankings, they be sure to bring in the caveat, a team that has the number 7 running back room and the number 8 wide receiver room and the number 6 offensive line and the number 5 quarterback, that might be your number 2 or 3 offense because of how all of those things work together,
Yep.
right? Like they don't have a big weakness or anything like that. And I think Virginia Tech is kind of in that age. Like, I don't think we have a wide receiver that is going to be an All-American, right? I don't think Bashal Tootin is the next Christian McCaffrey out the backfield. I don't know if Kyron Drones has developed as a big time passer yet. I hope he has, but we haven't seen that yet. It's how they all work together within the scheme that makes this offense so good or made them so good last year. And
That
so I
was
think
well said, Sam.
thank you. Yeah. When you've been doing this, when you look at these preseason stuff for a little bit, you have to kind of separate the individual players from the team aspect a bit. And I think Virginia Tech as a team is better than their star power, right? I don't think we're going to have a guy finish high in the Heisman rankings this year. I hate to
Yeah,
break it to
we're
you, Pete,
not
but
we're not dragging ass on any of those categories. That's
yeah,
that's the real key. And I like the favorable offensive line. Like, hey, you tell me we're going to this year with the 6th best offensive line in the ACC. Hell yeah, I'll
I'll take
take
that.
that. I'll take
I will
that
take
all
that
day.
all day long. We had guys tripping over each other at the beginning of last year. Now we're the 6th in the conference. Let's go.
Phil also projected us to be the 8th best rush offense in the country. He does a lot of this like statistical projection. He put us at 8th in the country in rushing offense. That's
Which is
that's pretty.
curious because I think this team is going to throw the ball a bit more than what people
I
think.
think we are too. I think we're going to throw it a lot more because Pate has been blowing up talking about our rush offense, how good it's going to be. I don't think Kyron said something like, "I only want to run if I have to." Like he wants to to pass the ball and pass the ball well this year, use Tootin, use throws out of the backfield, that kind of thing. He will run. No, don't get me wrong. He will run. But I think people are underestimating how much we may throw the ball this year.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Okay, let's just go over these last couple things. We're getting a little long in the tooth here. A couple all-conference things. He had Tootin on first team at kick returner. Second team, we had 5 people. Drones, second team quarterback in the conference, which is pretty great. APR, second team. Peebles, second team. Holloway, second team punt returner. And then Peter Moore, second team punter. Third team, Strong and Love. Fourth team, Felton, Moore, and Lawson. So a lot of guys on his 4 all-conference teams. If you go to the schedule, 65th toughest in the country. So right in the middle of college football, that is like the 4th or 5th easiest power conference schedule out there.
I have 79th in the country. Strength of schedule.
So yeah, and that's got to be one of your bottom power conference schedules.
I believe it's like 5th or 6th.
Yeah.
It's pretty low. Yep.
And then he had UVA with the 11th toughest schedule in the country.
I don't know about that one, Chief.
Are they playing JMU again this year?
I have Virginia at 44. I think they play JMU.
Well, so last year, Sam, 2023, his like, he puts that in the magazine too. UVA had the toughest schedule in the country in last year. According to Phil, they had the toughest schedule in the country.
UVA's non-conference is Richmond, Maryland, Coastal, and Notre Dame.
So they get Notre Dame. I think they get Clemson.
They get Clemson. They have their tough games are going to be, Maryland, kind of whatever. Louisville, Clemson on the road, Notre Dame on the road, SMU, Virginia Tech on the road. So
that's pretty tough.
They don't have an easy schedule, but dude, that's not 11th in the country.
Probably not.
No.
And then I put this on my Twitter this week. JMU and Liberty are second to last and last in strength of schedule for this upcoming season. So last year we heard about all the stuff, how Liberty basically had the weakest schedule in the country. Well, guess what? They're back, baby. They are going to rack up some Mickey Mouse wins, and they're going to make a play again for that G5 spot. I don't see Liberty going undefeated again. It is, regardless of your schedule, it is very hard to go undefeated 2 years in a row.
Yep. I would agree with that. I think they are for sure. Like, I don't see them losing 2 or 3, but I see them losing at least 1. I have them as the 3rd to easiest schedule. Only UConn and Air Force having easier schedules. I have James Madison the 120th easiest schedule, so not much tougher. I think JMU is kind of a product of the Sun Belt being a little bit more down this year than normal. Liberty, I think, is a product of their conference, is basically the FCS transition conference, and they are not making an effort to schedule non-conference games right now, and I don't think they will. I think they are perfectly happy scheduling how they are right now. And I don't blame them. I don't blame them. They're in a system that rewards them for that. If they go 12-0, it's going to be tough to not call them a top 12 team in the country.
Yeah, and that's annoying. I wanted to note that in some of his projections that Phil does, ODU and Vandy are both projected to have 2 of the 5 worst pass defenses in the country. So we just talked about our wide receivers. We just talked about the development of Kyron Drones. Well, first up is Vandy. And not only did Phil say they're going to be like number 130 in the country in pass defense, but they lost a corner today, or at least like in the last 2 days for this upcoming season, a starting corner. So that I've expressed some nerves about the Vandy game. Hearing this kind of stuff makes me feel better about our odds to win.
Hawaii threw for 350 plus on them on the road. So,
but they throw a lot.
That's Timmy Chang. Timmy Chang and Hawaii.
That's what they do.
That's the first game I pulled up, but yeah, they're not a good pass defense.
Do you think it's funny that
We've talked about ODU, pass
Yeah.
defense on here. Yep.
That Phil has Miami as the conference winner.
No, because I think Miami's stacked.
Yeah. I think they're really they are kind of stacked. It's all about line play, right? And Mario is really good about building up those lines. He's not a great in-game coach, but he can recruit and he can build up his lines. And if you look at, the top of the conference, it's who's got the best offensive lines, who's got the best defensive lines. And it's Miami, it's Florida State, it's Clemson, and it's us.
Yeah, I think Miami also having Virginia Tech at home at night on a Friday is a big win scheduling wise for them. I do think they have some tough games. That trip to Cal is pretty tough, but I mean they're a really talented team, and I think people need to be ready for it. Be ready for the Miami hype train this year.
I just
mentally prepare for it, embrace it, love that college football has good villains, and just roll with it.
I'm going to be pissed if Miami has a loss when we play them. Like they have no business taking loss before that game. They might, but they might. That would be very Miami of them.
Mm-hmm.
But as much as I
they're losing at Syracuse last week this season. They don't have a shot.
Without a doubt.
Not a shot.
But if they lose to Florida, I'm going to be annoyed. One, because of the whole ACC SEC thing. Two, because they're on our schedule. And I want that game with maximum hype from us and from them.
Oh, ESPN will make sure it has maximum hype. Don't worry about that.
And it will be packed. It will be a packed house in Miami because that's the only time they come out for games is big night games like that. All right. Before we close out, random Hokie, Sam.
All righty. This is random Hokie. Again, for the people who are new, we are going to I'm going to give you some stats about this player.
Mystery Hokie, random Hokie, whatever you want to call it.
Yep. I'm going to tell you how many years they played at Tech. I'm going to give you a couple fun facts. I'm not going to say the year, but it is a player who has played in the 21st century. Entire career is in the 21st century. So this player was a 3-year starter, 4-year contributor at Virginia Tech. Across his career, had 298 total tackles, 2.5 sacks, 2 interceptions, 21 passes defended, a fumble recovery, and a forced fumble. The best game for this player happened in 2015 against Virginia, where they had an interception and 12 total tackles. Fun fact about this. So you have one of the years. Fun fact about this player. They will probably reach their 100th NFL game played this year.
Yeah, I'm going to have to go with Kyle Fuller.
Wait, no, it is not Kyle Fuller.
Hold on. Because I was thinking, I went too quickly. Because the years don't make sense.
I would say 2015 is a kind of tough year because there's a lot of players overlapped in that season.
Chuck Clark.
Chuck Clark, that is the answer. Congratulations.
Thank you.
That was a good one. It is that interception at the end of the game across the middle, playing center field. Ironically, the Texas Roadhouse in Suffolk, Virginia, has a big mural of him making that interception.
Really?
Yes. I'll take a picture of it next time. I don't really
awesome.
go there much, but when we do go there, I'll let you know. He is playing really. He had the injury last year. They kept him out for the season, but he has had a really good NFL career. Like, dude has been solid with Baltimore. I believe he's with the Jets now.
And didn't he win like Walter Payton Man of the Year one year? Like he also does a lot of good work for people.
Yeah, he was there. Each team has a nominee, and he was their nominee.
Gotcha.
For 1 year. So Chuck Clark has been awesome, ambassador of the program, really good player with the Ravens, now with the Jets. I know we have a lot of Jets fans, it's Hokies as well. So Chuck Clark, shout out.
With all those tackle numbers, I was thinking they're like Fuller and him in college, same type of player because they could play close to the line of scrimmage, but they also could cover. And so you got like kind of remember the 2013 GT game with Kyle Fuller playing whip and just killing people. Like that
Chuck Clark started 3 different positions at Virginia Tech. He started strong safety, I think one game he played like whip free safety because there were some injuries, and he started at cornerback. So a very versatile defensive back.
Yeah, one of our more underrated players at Tech, and then
Mhm.
even into his NFL career, underrated as like just knowledge within the fan base. For
Oh yeah.
example, I didn't guess him first. I should have guessed him first, but I went too quickly because Fuller, I don't believe was even on the 2015 team. I think he would have already been
And
gone by then.
he played quick maths here. I think he played in 40 games at Virginia Tech.
Yeah,
So he's
that's
played a lot of football at Virginia Tech, almost 300 tackles. I think he was just a guy who was just solid. Like he didn't make a ton of highlight plays, but was really solid. I think he was overshadowed by like Diablo and a couple other
and you
defensive
know what's
backs.
funny too is I
Really
think
solid player.
in 2015 we had two guys named Clark, and Dion Clark was the backer, I want to say, and he made a lot of tackles, and
Mhm.
he was a good player, and so that might have led to a little bit of confusion as well because there were multiple Clarks, one with an E and one without.
Yeah, that's this week's random Hokie of the week. They will get progressively harder. That one wasn't. That
Yeah,
one's kind of a tough one because
because of the NFL thing, it made it easier.
it is a 4-year starter at defensive back with only 2 interceptions.
Yeah.
Was a little surprising to me, but Chuck Clark, good player. Best of luck on the Jets this year.
Yeah, heck yeah. All right. That is going to do it for the podcast. Make sure you subscribe to the Sons of Saturday channel. Make sure you
Like,
rate and review us, whether it's on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, anything else. Hit up the website because we've got a lot of good articles out there and whatnot. And like I said before, Sam and I are going to be back with some opponent previews. We're lining up our shows for August right now. I've got a couple guests in mind. I put on our Twitter, like, if you could have one guest on the show, who would it be to talk about the upcoming season? Of course, we're getting Michael Vick, Corey Moore. Yes, we would love to get some of those guys on the show. I don't know how easy that would be to pull off. And we did have Dwight Vick on the show. Someone said Dwight Vick. He has been on our show on the National Championship Pod, and we cut up a couple of different videos with him. He's awesome. Dwight's the best. But anyway, August is going to be great. The end of July is going to be great, and we are getting so close to the season. And until next time, go Hokies.
go Hokies.